bulk mail postcards if you can afford them. This is where the post office, you get a bulk mail permit and you send out 30,000 cards, or 10,000 3 times, or however you can do that. They have the longest lasting shelf life, at least in America. And I can tell you story after story of people that knew they needed something spiritual in their life. They weren't quite ready yet. So they stuffed that postcard somewhere on the desk in their house or on top of their fridge or somewhere. And then months later, when they realized, I've got to go investigate faith, they could find your postcard and come to your church. And so the first story I can tell you of that was my first church plant years ago. And so our postcards went out prior to launch, which we launched that church on March 8th. So this postcard probably was late February or early March. There was a lady came through the front doors of our church on Christmas Eve, our first year. So it's 9 months later, crying with our postcard in her hand. And she said, I finally got the courage to come. And she had our postcard in hand. She didn't have to bring it to attend, but she brought it with her because she had put it on her fridge. And when the Holy Spirit finally, like in the book of Acts, they were cut to the heart, when she finally got to that point where she says, I got to do something, then that postcard was available to her. So I love postcards if you can afford them, because it's something physical and tangible that's right there. We've already talked about 3 or 4 to a smaller radius beats fewer to a broader radius. Keep the front side very simple and very catchy. Some guys will try and get too much information on the front side, and I think that's a mistake. I think you capture attention with the front side. New Life has always done a phenomenal job with this, with their postcards, with some silly picture on the front that forces you to flip to see what's on the back. I got one postcard one time, just a few years ago, from a church in town, and the front of it was bright red, and then in black letters it said, "This card may change your life." That's all it said on the front, and they printed it this way rather than this way, so it was all red, like bright red. And that's begging you to turn it over, right? Now, most of the skeptics and the non-Christians in town turn it over. It's like, oh, shucks, it's a church, but they thought it was something else. But for the people that the Holy Spirit has been stirring up something in their life, they're ready for that postcard. And something that simple, it was just all text. This card may change your life. And then you turn it over on the backside and read about how that would happen. And again, we talked about this morning about your services. Get honest input from non-church people about, if you got this card in the mail, would this make you interested about, my daughter's calling me, that's going to ring on my thing here in a second, but ask some unchurched people, your neighbor across the street or a guy you work with, hey, we're going to be, here's a mock-up of a postcard I'm going to be mailing out, and I don't want to waste all my money. Would this make you interested in my church or not? And again, don't ask your church friends, all right, because they will lie to you, and they will say that's awesome, and it's like, well, you're not trying to reach them anyway, So ask a cross section of people, single moms, co-workers, neighbors, teenagers, whoever it needs to be, to get a broad idea of, will this work? You get one shot to send it out. And so don't waste your money by having a card that isn't going to do what you're trying to do. So I can talk about that more. We'll get that to the end as well. Make sure it's clear, obvious, and not confusing. Your radius, I don't want to get in the weeds here, but at least in a lot of context, now the post office allows you to pick your zip codes by drive time rather than by radius. And if that makes any sense, sometimes based on the way your highways are, someone can live 10 miles away and get to your church in 12 minutes. And other people can live 5 miles away and it takes them 20 minutes to get to your church. And so it used to be that the post office would only allow you to do a radius, but now they actually let you pick your zip codes to mail to by drive time. And to me, that's pretty valuable. And here's my own opinion. And I don't know if I've seen this anybody else, but if you spend the money on a bulk mail postcard, uh, I want it to be the last thing that they get before my opening day. It's not the thing I introduce my community to my church, because they're not interested enough in my church for me to waste all this money. The first time they get it, they go, "That's nice," and they throw it in the mail because you're a month away or 6 weeks away from opening. But if they've seen 6 things already and then they get this 2 days before my opening day, then they go, "Oh yeah, this is this church I've seen 6 things about. Oh, they're at the movie theater next Sunday. Maybe I'll go." And so for me personally, I wanted the postcard to be last, not first, because it is by far the most expensive thing you're going to spend marketing on. So I have to make sure it's going to work. Now, it's by far likely you can spend money on television ads, radio ads, which I've done both, but they are useful. But I think their return on investment is way too small because it's so expensive, particularly in the larger market like DC. The radio market's crazy, and radio is pretty much dead anymore now that we've got streaming on Amazon Prime Music or Pandora or whatever you listen to, and those are expensive ads too. But I have had guys investigate should they do ads on Pandora or other things, and the answer is if you can afford it and it works with everything else, maybe.